Your patience, and welcome to this press point with European Commission President Barroso and the President of Ukraine, Mr. Poroshenko. The presidents are here to talk to you about the meetings that they've just had. I give the floor to the President Barroso.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And let me start by warmly welcoming President Poroshenko to Brussels. We met this morning to exchange views about the ongoing crisis in Ukraine. We have discussed the latest developments in the security and humanitarian situation in eastern Ukraine, which have further increased our concern. And this afternoon, the European Council will also address these developments. President Poroshenko's visit today in Brussels is an important symbol of the European Union's continuing support for Ukraine and our commitment to achieving a political negotiated solution to the conflict which respects Ukraine's sovereignty, independence and unity. This is our primary objective. I have personally been engaging intensively with both sides over the past weeks, as I have done throughout the crisis. At my initiative, the European Union was represented at the Minsk meeting earlier this week. I have been in continuous contacts with Presidents Putin and Poroshenko, calling for a political solution to the crisis, based on a ceasefire that also has clear guarantees regarding border security and control. And the Commission as a whole is doing its utmost to help solve the conflict. We are doing it, of course, namely in the areas of our competence. Thanks to our efforts, we will resume trilateral talks on energy in the beginning of September to facilitate a solution to the gas dispute. We are also intensifying our contacts on the implementation of the association agreement with Ukraine, including the free trade agreement. And there will be a ministerial meeting on this matter, possibly on the 12th of September. But at the same time, the European Union has been very clear that all this needs to go hand in hand with a solution to the political and security problem. Unfortunately, this is not what we have witnessed in the past few days. In fact, the situation has worsened considerably. The opening of new fronts and the use of Russian regular forces is not acceptable and represents a grave transgression. Just yesterday, I had a very long and frank talk with President Putin over the phone. I had the opportunity to convey these messages to President Putin. I urged him to change course. No one's interest is served by new wars on our continent. No one's interest is served by confrontation. This is simply not the way that responsible, proud nations should behave in the 21st century. Nobody is underestimating Russia's concerns. We are ready to listen to Russia's concerns. But political differences need to be resolved through political means. Russia should not underestimate the European Union's will and resolve to stand by its principles and values. As the conflict moves into urban areas, we need to avoid more civilian casualties. The humanitarian situation needs to be addressed urgently. International assistance is needed, but it must be done in coordination with the Ukrainian authorities, in full respect of the international humanitarian principles, but also in full respect of Ukraine's sovereignty. Just this month, the Commission pledged a further €2.5 million to assist the most vulnerable people affected by the fighting. And we are ready to increase our support for the Ukrainian-led and international humanitarian response efforts. Just now, in a meeting with President Poroshenko, we have discussed some of these issues and where and how we are going to deal with them in the future. We are also helping Ukraine to cope with the economic effects of the crisis. In March, the European Union agreed on an extraordinary assistance package which the European Commission has proposed for Ukraine. More than €500 million in loans and 250 million euros in grants have already been mobilized by the European Commission as part of this package. Over 1 billion more in loans could be released in the coming months, and we are ready to consider further financial assistance should additional needs be identified by the IMF during its next review mission. And unilateral trade measures proposed by the European Commission in April have resulted in a 14% increase in Ukrainian exports to the European Union in recent months. This is an unprecedented boost of exports of Ukraine to the European Union. This is also a way to compensate for some losses the Ukrainian economy is already feeling because of the conflict with Russia. The European Commission has also set up a support group to ensure that the Ukrainian authorities have all the assistance they need to carry out the political and economic reforms necessary to stabilize the country. This is paramount importance. While the security situation is the primary concern of the Ukrainian authorities, the reform process encompassing a broad national dialogue, constitutional review and decentralization is part and parcel of an overall political solution. We expect the upcoming elections to help accelerate such reforms. Only a politically stable, economically viable Ukraine can ensure and consolidate its own independence. Finally, we are ready to host a donors conference at the end of the year that includes the reconstruction of the eastern regions particularly affected. The situation in Ukraine touches both Europe and the wider international community. This is a matter of grave and global concern. Ladies and gentlemen, I said just now to President Poroshenko, and I said also yesterday to President Putin, we are in a very serious, I would say, dramatic situation. We may see a situation where we reach the point of no return. If the escalation of the conflict continues, this point of no return can come. I believe it's still not yet too late to find a political solution. I believe we should do everything we have in our capacity to avoid an escalation that will certainly be detrimental to the interests, first of all, of Ukraine, but certainly also of Russia and of Europe as a whole. We are working based on the principles, and we respect those principles. At the same time, it's our duty to call the attention of all those involved on the risks of further escalation. And President Poroshenko, 2 months ago, you said the signature of the association agreement was one of the most important days since the independence of Ukraine. And we have not forgotten this. And we thank you for your clear and principled position. The European Union stands for peace and democracy. And I want to encourage you to do everything in your power to bring peace back to the region. I want to conclude now saying that it was a very good occasion to discuss in depth these issues with President Poroshenko, and of course that we are going to keep in contact over the next days and weeks. And I'm very happy that today he has also the opportunity to address the European Council. President Poroshenko, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President. I would like to use this opportunity for especially thank President Barroso and President Van Rompuy for this invitation to visit Brussels today. This is a very important day. And actually, the negotiation we already have with the President Barroso and the meeting we have with the President Van Rompuy give us the very strong hopes that European solidarity with Ukraine, which is crucially important for Ukrainians today, were fully demonstrated by all European institutions. Unfortunately, this visit comes in an extremely difficult circumstances for my country. Despite the consolidated international efforts and our strive for peace, Ukraine now is a subject for foreign military aggression and terror. We have worsening the situation from the 27th of August, and thousands of the foreign troops and hundreds of the foreign tanks now on the territory of Ukraine, with a very high risk, not only for the peace and stability for Ukraine, but for the whole peace and stability in Europe. We have a full understanding that there is not existing the military solution for this conflict. We understand, and from the very beginning demonstrating our strong will for peace, proposing the peace plan for the Ukrainian president, for all of the people of Ukraine. And I'm absolutely sure that if Ukrainians have a possibility by themselves solve their problem, the war is not exist on Ukrainian territory. That's why I think that only the dialogue is crucially important for us. And I want to thank for President Barroso about the arranging very important mission of the European Union Commission, including the High Commissioner Catherine Ashton, Commissioner Oettinger and Commissioner de Gucht, which were together with Ukraine on the Minsk negotiation. We hope that we reach some progress in a negotiation about the DCFTA and on the negotiation in the energy question, which continue on the 6th and on the 12th of September in Brussels. But the most important thing now is peace. And discussion held here today proved that the European Union fully comprehends the global nature of threat faced by Ukraine. And our partners also understand clearly where this threat originates from and who bears responsibility for that. Following the meeting, I can definitely say that the Russian aggression against Ukraine will not stay without European Union reaction. And this is very important for Ukraine, that today Ukrainian president invited to take part in the European Union Council meeting to debrief the leaders of European Union about the current situation. We discussed also with the President how to coordinate our mutual response with the European Union, to share our dual view, how to support Ukraine and how to protect the territorial integrity, independence and sovereignty of Ukraine. And I am convinced that after today's discussion, the European Union Council will stay united to its resolute response to flagrant violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and inviolability of borders. During the meeting, I have confirmed that the Verkhovna Rada would ratify the Ukraine-EU Association Agreement already in September, as we agreed before. This will allow us to start the provisional application as from 1st of November 2014, as we agreed before. And I have also informed on the political situation in Ukraine. Despite the aggression, we stay committed to the people's expectation following Maidan. And we work to ensure democracy and rule of law, to get rid of corruption and decentralize the power, yielding more rights to the communities. I shared the news that I have dissolved the parliament and the new election will take place on the 26th of October. Election and the political dialogue are our means to reach out to each and every citizen of Ukraine. We also discussed the outstanding issue on energy security, and I would like to mention that Ukraine highly appreciates mediation effort of European Union and personally Commissioner Oettinger in the finding out solution to existing gas issue between Ukraine and Russia. I think this is a first but very important example of the very close cooperation between Ukraine and European Union in an energy question when we have joint position. And I think that it brings us to the close results. I am glad to receive many positive signals and readiness to further enhance assistance to Ukraine. Ukraine appreciates EU comprehensive economic and financial assistance, which is utmost important for the implementing structural reform and overcoming consequences of the Russian aggression. EU macrofinancial assistance to Ukraine help us to address difficult financial situation and bring forward the structural reform. We have discussed the possibility for the additional allocation from the EU side, as well as the special assistance program for the Donbass reconstruction, and the message about the possible €1 billion third wave of the macrofinancial assistance is crucially important for us. And I thank President Barroso for this positive message. Today we are talking about the fate of Ukraine, but tomorrow it could be about the fate for security and stability for the whole Europe. And that's why our solidarity, our negotiation is today crucially important for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Barroso. Thank you, President Poroshenko. We are very pressed for time. We have time for two questions. The first one to Ukrainian television, please.
Okay, first question for Ukrainian President. Пане президенте, скажіть, яких конкретно
Mr. President, what concrete measures you expect from Europe that the sanctions will be given after today's conference, and are you going to talk about the military support?
As we understand, a further sanction upon Russia are not exactly outcome which is expected. So what do you think this strategy not to mess up with President Putin that much, how effective it is to stop Russian aggression? And what should happen for European leaders to apply another strategy, tougher strategy? Thanks.
Мета санкцій не
The goal of the sanctions is not to cause some damage to any country in the world. The goal of the sanctions is to create a motivation for real negotiation to de-escalate situation in the eastern part of Ukraine. I have no doubts that today, after our discussion, the Council of the European Union will adopt a decision to give a task to European Commission to prepare a specific decision on these sanctions. If they are going to implement or not, it depends how fast we will be able to demonstrate the progress in de-escalating the situation. We expect that during the day that our military personnel that doing their task will have an opportunity to evacuate the people, the military personnel from the region. We have to do the steps that will do progress and peace and lead to peace in Ukraine. I am strongly convinced that the implementation of the peace plan that was proposed and after the discussions with OSCE was kind of amendment that this peaceful plan will be a basis that very quickly, probably at the beginning of September, we will be able to stop the war in Ukraine. We have the opportunities, but we are not sure if all parties involved will use this plan. If not, then I think the European Union will use the sanctions prepared. Another thing. Military support. Ukraine is ready to protect ourselves. We do not count on the military people from other countries to fight back to back with Ukrainian militaries to protect our sovereignty and our borders. We do not expect that. But military technical support, let's say exchange of the intellectual data, exchange of consultations, bilateral consultation that we have in Brussels, and also positions of the President of Ukraine, we will express during the NATO summit that will be in the beginning of September. That's also our position.
Regarding restrictive measures or sanctions, this is a decision for the member states to take. What I can tell you now, on behalf of the European Commission, is that we have already prepared some options. So we have done our work in case the member states decide to go for further levels of sanctions. I want also to tell you that the governments of the European Union and the European Council itself, they have stated before that if there was further escalation of the conflict in Ukraine and further destabilization of Ukraine, there will be certainly some more measures. And so I expect the member states of the European Union to be ready to take some more measures. Now, of course, this is their competence and they have to decide on it. And of course, it will be important for them to listen to President Poroshenko that today will have the opportunity to address the whole European Council. At the same time, I want to underline a point. Sanctions or restrictive measures are not an end in themselves. We have said before that we want to show the Russian leadership that the kind of behavior they have been taken will certainly have consequences. And I think the European Union has taken a very principled position, very clearly showing the support to Ukraine and to the sovereignty of Ukraine. So I expect our member states to keep that principled position. But once again, sanctions or restrictive measures are just ways, means or instruments to show to the Russian leadership that the current situation is not acceptable and that we urge them to come to reason, to work constructively. We have certainly no interest in the European Union in confrontation with Russia, and I believe Russia should have no interest in confrontation with the European Union. If we think strategically, it makes no sense to have this kind of conflict or kind of a new Cold War. I made this point extremely clear once again to President Putin yesterday. So we are ready to take very strong and clear measures, but at the same time, we are keeping our doors open for a true political solution, because I believe that it does not make sense, this kind of escalation that can be detrimental, first of all, for Ukrainian people, because they are suffering in their own country the consequences of this conflict, but also that will be detrimental for all of us in Europe.
Thank you. A question from international press, Al Jazeera television, and that's unfortunately what we have time for. Please.
Two questions. First to President Poroshenko. Simon from Al Jazeera. So, given that so far European Union sanctions seem not to have affected Russian behaviour, is it time for a different kind of sanctions? And should they perhaps now include military assistance of equipment, non-lethal equipment, things of that nature? To President Barroso, you referred to the European Union's willingness to escalate sanctions if the situation on the ground is escalated, which clearly it has this week. Is it not incumbent upon European leaders today to give a clear, unequivocal lead towards greater intensification and widening of sanctions after your deliberations later today? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Again, I want to stress that we're looking for peace, we are not looking for war. And we don't have any problem with the supply of non-lethal military assistance, because it's already done by the decision of by the conclusion of European Union Council from the 27th of June. We expand our military and technical assistance to our country's partners on the bilateral level, because this is not a competence of the European Union Commission or European Union Council. But again, today we here speak not about the war. We want to speak about the peace, and to create and to confirm the strong solidarity of the European Union together with Ukraine. And this is what we demonstrate already, and I'm sure we can demonstrate after the European Union Council session. The continuation of this demonstration of solidarity I'm sure will happen on the NATO summit. And that is the results of this form of cooperation. But again, we are waiting that in the very next days, starting from Monday, we can demonstrate the real progress in the peace negotiation. Why? Because we are too close to the border where from it would be no return to the peace plan. And every participant of the conflict should understand the responsibility of that. Let's not try to flame the new, not to initiate, to spark the new flame of war in Europe. That is what I'm proud that we survived a generation without the war. And I hate the idea that we return to this situation. And this is the main topic, the main point of our meetings here in Europe. And we feel full support of the European Union on Ukraine from all the leaders of the countries and to the leaders of the European Union. That is very important for us.
I think now President Poroshenko and also myself in the previous question have already answered your question. I expect the leaders of the European Union member states, because this is a competence of the governments of Europe, to be ready for a new round of sanctions following the recent escalation and further destabilization of Ukraine. That's what they have said, and that's what I expect them to do. That's their responsibility. What I can tell you is that from the side of the Commission that we have, of course, considered all the options, and we have done this kind of work at the request of our governments. But once again, and as President Poroshenko now very clearly put the question, the sanctions are not an end on themselves. We don't see the sanctions or restrictive measures as a way of escalating. We see them as a response to an escalation that we did not want. And I hope that the conditions will be there for a real political effort, diplomatic effort, to find solutions for some issues. We, the European Commission, we have been active in trying to find pragmatic, practical solutions for issues like the energy relationship between Ukraine and Russia. We have been mediating those efforts. On the DCFTA, the Deep and Comprehensive Free Trade Area, just yesterday, in my talks with President Putin, I told him that we are ready to have a compromise regarding the implementation. We have to respect the sovereign right of Ukraine to conclude an association agreement with the European Union. That agreement was done, it is signed, it will be implemented. But we are ready to consider with our Russian partners some ways of implementing the agreement in a way that takes, at least to some extent, their concerns on board. And I think this is the best thing we can do as European Union to work for peace and stability in Ukraine. And you just heard now the President of Ukraine saying that this is exactly what he's expecting from us. And I'm expecting also the European leaders of the member states, together with European institutions, today to reaffirm these positions of principle and take the decisions according to these principles.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. This concludes our press point. I know there were many requests. This is what we had time for. Thank you for your attendance.
Сюда.